everybody, and welcome to the 26th episode of the Insiders on Real Estate and Marketing. I am your friendly host, Sandy Hibbard, and this is my very friendly co-host, Mr. Mark Miller.
TGIF. I like the Fridays.
I do
this.
too.
Yeah.
I do too. We're always in a good mood.
Oh yeah, yeah. Because we know we're leaving the industry for 48 hours.
For 48 hours. You and I get to do that. Not everybody can.
No.
Mark is the president over at Secured Title of Texas. That is our wonderful sponsor now for the second year in a row. So we're really, really proud to have them be a part of the Insiders. And so if you need a new title home, you want to talk to Mark, check out securedtitleoftexas.com.
There you go.
Today we're just going to have, I liked what you said, a fireside chat.
Yeah.
We didn't have a guest in because we got some things we need to talk about. And that is things happening and changing and challenging the closing situations in this market right now. Mark's going to talk about things like that, and I'm going to give you some really good tips on questions I've received on Instagram, streamlining your videos, and how to get your name up in the search on Google, which is a big question. So we'll get back to that here in a few minutes, but I just wanted to check in with Mark and see how has your month been.
Good. Yeah.
You told me you've been so busy.
Yeah, a little bit more activity, I think, this month than last month, which, realistically, we're moving towards spring selling, so it's still the inventory
Spring
challenge.
officially is Monday,
I know. So order count is lifted a little bit. We're having a good closing month. Main thing I'm working on is our commercial business has been so beneficial to us that I went ahead and expanded and took another, on the second floor, I took another space, and I'm moving our commercial team up to 2 so I can make room for more residential escrow officers on our first floor, and I extended our lease.
Fabulous.
There as well. We've been there for 7 years. I love that location, Parker and the Tollway. Easy in
Great
and out.
office place you've got.
Yeah, we've got a really nice space. So anyway, we got that secured away. So we've got all the frenzy of painting and carpet and all that stuff. Thankfully, no build out because it's a perfect space of that.
Done. It's done.
And this moment in time in the business side, or where we've probably been as an industry in the last 90 days, I've probably never been more thankful to have commercial.
I was just going to say
in our mix because the residential inventory has certainly been challenged. I think transactionally, all title companies would admit.
We were just talking about that.
Yeah,
about tell them about the Collin County meeting.
Well, I'm really interesting. I'm chair of the strategic planning committee for the Collin County Association of Realtors, and we had a breakout session yesterday. Marvin.
Marvin Jolly.
Yeah, Marvin. He led a leadership on leadership, and he was actually fabulous. And then Mike Brody rolled in and talked about serving and that level. I mean, it was a really nice session. But Mary Lighty, who's the chief executive, pointed out to us that there are now 10,000 members of the Collin County Association of Realtors, and you factor that into let's just say 20% are affiliates, and that could be the broad category of that, then that means about 8,000 licensed realtors are in the marketplace with an inventory that is not even close to being able to support.
Competing for what?
Yeah.
1,000 homes?
So
I bet you are happy for commercial then.
Absolutely. So and to that point too, probably what you'll talk about, I mean, how do you, if you're one of those 8,000, how do you brand yourself, distinguish yourself? What's your strategy?
Yeah.
Because if you're rolling out of real estate school and then think it's just going to be a cakewalk, it's not.
You better be aggressive.
Yeah.
And I know we're going to talk about this more, but just segueing into the challenges that you're seeing in title, and the challenges that I see in marketing for these agents who are vying for such little inventory.
Right.
You got to be aggressive.
Oh, you have to be.
And you've got to build a relationship.
Yeah. You probably have to do the first.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
You've got to have the relationship with people.
I don't know that there's any more of a key time to have relationships and with the people, and because it probably you start thinking about people that roll into this industry, and that everybody always thinks of their sphere of influence. But you know, you don't have the knowledge, so you better have the relationship, because you're only going to gain the knowledge through transactions.
Exactly.
And through whatever be the training that they may facilitate through the brokerage
It's so
company.
challenging to start new in this business. But it's not a no-brainer. You know, our friend Troy Olson, he's over at Keller now, and he's doing a lot of coaching. That's where he's spending most of his time. And he's coaching on dual careers. So a lot of realtors that are coming into the market are having to juggle.
They have to be.
2 jobs.
Yeah.
Yeah, and so there is actual training on that now.
Yeah.
Because it's with this market the way that it is, you better have something as a backup.
Right.
You know.
Right. Well, and you better have, you better have some good industry partners with you as well, particularly if you're new into the industry. And when I say new, I'm not talking about 6 months. I'm talking about people that are in the industry inside of 5 years, compared to people, you know, that have 10 to 20 years.
Yeah, 5 years used to be a veteran.
They have an historical perspective, but 5 years is people don't have the transactional knowledge that they are, and the environment out there is changed dramatically in terms of what they need to understand and know about a transaction. And it's not just the contract. It's all the other things behind it.
It's everything.
Yeah.
Like what we were saying
Right.
earlier before the show started, there's so much that's changed. You don't hardly even recognize real estate the way that it was 10 years ago. So if you don't have that historical backdrop,
Right.
I mean, I don't know. Does it help you? Does it hurt you? What do you think?
Well, I think it could be to your detriment, but and I'll give you. I mean, it's about the knowledge of what to look for and what to ask for that you may not have. And one of the ones that sort of everyone's learning from is suddenly, as the bandwidth goes north, more and more people are beginning to sell their land. And there's all kinds of little things to know about land that is not like lot and block in a residential home.
We saw that with our guest Sarah Boyd last month.
And you start dealing with rollback taxes. You start dealing with the importance of that survey, what could potentially have happened since they've owned that land that would impact the use of that land.
And if you're new in the business and you don't have a reputable, solid title partner, and a title partner who's going to give you attention, who's going to take the time to help you and explain to you no matter what the price point is on the deal, you're going to be SOL. You've got to have help on that side.
And I think they think too much about the title company after the contract signed, and they're not thinking about, as they're the ones that are going to begin to become knowledgeable by certain things a seller says in a process of listing that are flags. And if they're not cognizant of what those flags could mean, then it can disrupt the entire transaction.
Well, let's jump into that.
Sure.
I know you have got
pages
of information.
And I'll also share with you, and we've talked about it before, is the nature of the industry as it relates to fraud. Now, not fraud within our industry, but the people that we deal with.
Okay.
Wire fraud has obviously been a huge part. You have to be very careful on that side. But we just had literally a transaction in which, thankfully, one of our escrow assistants picked up on, and it was a identity theft that was resulting of the people that gotten hold of the identity were trying to sell the property of the owner without obviously his knowledge, and them not being entitled, and they went under contract as the seller.
Whoa.
And we were proceeding down the lane, but a red flag popped, and that is that the seller wanted a specific notary to notarize his documents. And Jana in our office, who's awesome, said, hey, kind of red flag, and she stopped the press.
So normally you require that it's done here?
Yeah, no, that would be an unusual request.
Yeah, I agree.
It wouldn't be unusual to ask for a notary. It'd be unusual to ask for this specific notary.
Okay.
And so what the discovery was is that they had stolen their identity and they had their license, and this was the second attempt. And so they made reference to another title company, and we called that title company, and they had no reference to the file.
Wow.
So we quickly determined this is a fraudulent deal.
Yeah.
And we
that's some ballsy people.
Ooh, and we shut it down. And
did they catch them?
Well,
I mean, you caught them in the
we caught them in that
act,
part.
but...
You know, they're probably out of state would be my guess. But the next step that we do is we alert the FBI.
So then you're out of it from
we
there.
take it in and let the crime side move in on them, and hopefully stop them.
Wow.
So, and then we immediately, what we do is we alerted our underwriters that we represent, and then they immediately put out bulletins on that particular property with that name. And if this name pops up under contract, call underwriting, which basically is an alert saying don't close this deal. So now we
so
kind
it
of
was
now
your
we throw
underwriter who was savvy enough to put 2 and 2 together and go, notary, this kind of notary located in this place.
This was actually in the escrow team.
So it was an escrow team at your office.
Yes, and then we collaborated through with Carrie as our general counsel.
Yeah.
And then, because then you have to start deciphering and determining how you communicate, because you got to be careful.
Yeah.
And then we, just as a obligation, we alerted our underwriters who want to know that, because that's going to be a fraudulent transaction. And so the end result was we got it shut down and no losses, and earnest money returned back to the buyer.
And the guy's house didn't get sold out from underneath him,
and
literally.
the seller still owns his property. I mean, but that's kind of the crazy stuff that we're seeing out there right now. So, but I mentioned rollback taxes. Another thing that I think should be very aware of is you have a lot of sales that are taking place where the party that's selling has a senior homestead designation, and so therefore they're getting a discount, we'll call it that, on their taxes. And now they're selling it to a party.
Can we stop for just a second and talk 1 minute about that?
Right.
So what is a senior discount?
Well, when you hit 65, which is the only reason I celebrated,
because you got this distinction.
You get this basically kind of a cap on certain levels of your taxes as a senior citizen, if you will.
So you're not paying school taxes necessarily
exactly.
anymore.
And so you're getting an additional exemption against whatever the valuation of the property is, which is therefore reducing your taxes, or at least stabilizing where they're not going to continue to be increased.
Is this something that's federal or
yes.
just Texas?
Well, it's Texas.
So I wonder if my mother could take advantage of that.
Well, she's in Oklahoma, right? Yeah, I'm not sure what the exemption laws are there. It happens automatically in Texas. So when you hit 65, you don't have to go fill out another form.
Okay. Your taxes are just going to change.
They're going to change. They'll recognize it as senior homestead exemption. Now, you then sell that property, and the new party comes in that's buying it, and they're not senior, that exemption has to be changed.
Right.
If it's not, and the deal closes, and then they trip the recognition of that, then taxes are going to increase, and there's going to be taxes due. From that transaction.
Okay. All right. So thank you for that explanation, because I was not aware of that, but I've often wondered.
So notification, and any title company that closes always have a final sheet that kind of basically says these are the responsibilities. Tax prorations are one of those pieces where you say you signed off on this. It's between buyer and seller.
I mean, that could make a difference in thousands of dollars being owed going into a home.
Yeah, and it can end up being a post-closing issue. And one of the things I try to focus on from our service standpoint, I don't want to have a post-closing issue, because that means I've got to go back to parties, and that's going to impact the relationship we have of our referring source, and it's going to upset those people that were in the transaction. So you really have to keep a more keen eye on taxes, because we get a tax certificate when we set our order up, and you can see and read through that, and you see senior homestead exemption, you get an idea of this party, notify, say, hey, just want to make sure this designation is going to need to change to that side. So that's another thing that we run across. And then
again, being forensic.
Yeah, and then the forensic, and then just surveys in general. Not as much in the residential, but now again, I'm pointing back toward the land side and the rural side, is that there's so many nuances, and it's to that point.
So getting a new survey?
Yes. Well,
with a sale?
Not necessarily have to get a new survey, but get hold of the old survey on the listing of that land.
Okay.
So that we can do a review of it, and then again, forensic, find out from your seller, has anything changed? Has the tollway extended? Did they give certain rights? Any of those things would have an impact to the survey and would require a new survey. And a new survey in a land deal can be quite expensive.
Oh, I bet.
And the timelines could be fairly long to get a land survey done as well.
I was just going to say, that's part of that title process.
Correct.
That we're always having to wait on.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah. So So anyhow, those are just that's just a few of the things that happen along the way, and we typically don't get into that swim lane until we get the contract in. And I would love for it to be that people would be calling us in advance and probably at the listing saying, can you go ahead and run title on this, and let's see if there's anything we need to be aware of, and get a copy of the survey.
Do you have agents that do that are really on top of that?
Only
kind of
about
thing?
10% of who we deal with.
Yeah.
They're so focused in the consummation of the contract that they're not focused at the first part of the conversation. And I've always said that, as you know, and whether if it's just a home, anything happens since you've had the property, any circumstances, any deaths, qualify, there's not a divorce, all those things which can be impactful to the conveyance of title. The more we know up front, the better we can diagnose the situation. And then say, set your timing in the contract to the following things, because it's going to take us 30, 60, or 90 days to resolve the title-related problem to that side. So anyhow, it's
there's so much.
There's a lot.
Is every state like this?
Well,
is title a thing? This is a really silly question, I know, for me to ask, but is title a thing across the country?
yes.
Okay.
There's just a significant difference in the way a property is insured across the country, and Texas is extremely unique in that side. And actually, I think it's easier in Texas than it is in other states.
Okay.
From a standpoint, because there's so many other types of coverage that is offered outside of Texas, and so we're pretty simple, and we have good rates.
Good.
That's why I've never left.
I know.
Yeah. So anyhow, that's just some of the some of the things that we're seeing out there, and
interesting.
and I think to another point that surfaced from what I was talking about in that breakout yesterday from Marvin is. Because he was kind of saying, well, why get involved in the association, and then why go to the national or regional meetings and so forth? And this is a marketing related side, is because the amount of friends he's made across the country, and because Marvin went all the way to chairman, and through attending those meetings for referrals from people that aren't licensed here but have a client that's moving from California or Florida or whatever. So that's A. And B, he's always put a big emphasis on, when we talked about relationship, not just the relationship of the people you're trying to get the opportunity to represent them to buy or sell, but in the relationship between this realtor and this realtor. So if Marvin's in there with 30 other realtors trying to go, and he knows the agent that has the listing, then that communication is going to be a trusting communication, and he's probably going to, that individual is probably going to decipher, he knows his stuff, and I know that if who he presents, we're probably going to get to the closing table.
Yeah.
So I thought it was interesting to, we focus so much on how to get to the opportunity.
Right.
But also you have to be able to be, how do they win? How does somebody that, with 50 people going after it, how are you the one that got the offer accepted and the other 49 did not?
I know. Let's bring them in and interview them, because that is a huge
what is the
thing.
criteria? Yeah. So it's
and so relationship is what you're saying, and Jolly was talking about that.
He was talking really about that.
And we've talked about that
And that's reputation as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And relationship, not just like you said with even the agent or with the buyer or the seller, but but relationships with the vendors.
Yes.
So you've got people you can call to get things done and get them done efficiently because they're pros.
Right.
Yeah, I love that.
Yeah, and even you got to the survey thing, as I was pointing out, all of a sudden somebody's like, oh my gosh, we got to have a survey. Who do we turn to? They don't know who.
Yeah.
We know the Rolodex of those that can get it done and get the best pricing. So we're trying to help control those costs, but get it done efficiently so they can meet their closing targets in their contracts.
Well, I don't know anything about the details like that of buying a house except through osmosis of marketing for the last 20 years in the real estate industry, but I'm the typical consumer. I don't know about all this stuff, so I'm going to have to rely completely on that person who represents me. And I've often said this too, that what's going to make me choose that person is the relationship that I feel like I have with them. I'm not going to just go online. I'm not.
Right.
And pick someone out of the hat to buy a house. I'm going to find someone that either I know or has presented themselves as an influencer in this area that knows Dallas, that knows Texas. All those things are so important.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so that brings us to the marketing side of it. Some of the questions that I have been getting from my clients that are trying to market themselves, to build relationship, online, is that's a hard job. It's not easy. When you look at social media from the standpoint of playing and networking and going and scrolling up and down at night and talking to people, that's the fun part of it. But if you look at social media as a marketing vehicle, it's as scientific as it gets. Mm-hmm. And so a lot of these clients of mine, these realtors, these business owners, are, there's a lot of things that they have to try to do for themselves, because to just own it all off to somebody else is quite taxing, and
right.
costs a lot of money to do that. So a few questions that I wanted to cover today on the marketing side. Probably the number one question that I get from clients: how do I get more engagement? Period. From the business to the consumer to the realtor to the entrepreneur. You've got a Facebook page, you've got a business Instagram page, you've got all these things, and they're just sitting out there. They're not getting any engagement. And that, folks, is the reality of it. And that is the hardest job we have as marketers, is to increase engagement organically. So that's the number one question that I get. Some of the things that we can do to increase engagement, and I've always said this, is engagement equals engagement. So the more you engage, the more engagement you're going to get. That it's kind of an old school thing. We've sort of already learned how to do this. We know that, and you can try it. You can go onto your Instagram right now and go find a few fabulous photos, a few great reels, like them, comment on them. All of a sudden, boom, that person is in your feed, right? You start seeing them. Now you've got an opportunity to engage with them more, and they have an opportunity to engage with you. So the first thing that you have to do to increase engagement is to engage yourself. And so that's just one simple answer. Another way to increase your engagement is, number one, just to have great stuff. I was reading an article this morning, and this is where the science to this just blows my mind. They've done research on the kinds of images that get and attract more engagement on social media. And it gets down into scientific stuff that's way over my head, talking about the angles of the pictures, the gradients that are used, the photos that are used. How many subjects do you have in a photo? Is it just one candle burning, or is it one house, or is it a house full of stuff? All of these things make a difference in whether or not someone's going to stop as they're scrolling and look at that picture. So the second thing I would say, other than engagement, is just create great imagery. You don't want your images to be too bright. You want them to be kind of a sexy feeling. Honestly, this is what this report said, that it's the gradients and the more muted tones that have maybe a central focus color, like Mark's outfit today. He's got that burgundy with a patterned shirt underneath, white poppy. He's got this color jacket with a little handkerchief right here. That would work well on social media because there's a central focus. It's pretty to look at. It's going to have different hues. So these are the kinds of things that we have to think about when we're posting our photos on Instagram if we want to get engagement.
The only other thing I see often, and particularly more on Facebook, and I just kind of flinch every time I see it, because we were talking before the show that we feel like we're in this tip of where the relevancy of marketing is going. Yeah. And I pause for a minute because I see the posting from market stats for Collin County February, and that's the post. And I'm like, who are you attracting to that site?
Does it interest you at all?
No. And on top of that, it's not, most of the time, at least as it's represented, is not coming directly from them. Down in the corner is XYZ Title Company. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. So it's sort of like this, collaboration, we want to call it that, but I don't think it's relevant to, if I'm buying or selling a home, I think I pretty well know it's hard to find a home, and if I sell, I'm going to get maximum price for it. I don't think the statistical side of it is reflective of anything from a marketing standpoint.
I think there could be a place for that somewhere in your marketing.
Right, but that should be the primary is what my point.
Totally agree with you.
And it's third party.
For years.
To me, it's third party. It's not really.
It's not personal.
And it's not. There's not any. And the other thing, if I did post that, then I would have a commentary about what I thought about that. I mean, I would bring forth some kind of level of expertise to support the document that I posted. And
agree.
I see that a lot.
I do too.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny because you can get into a routine of just getting posts out there. And so for the sake of getting something out there today, you just throw up a flash card or a placard that has no meaning, no human meaning to it. And this is what the report that I'm referring to was talking about on imagery, that it is that personalized kind of post that shares something that evokes emotion from me. And then the caption should always be something that is informing me about that. And I've even had clients that have said, no, I don't want, a long caption at all. And I'm like, whoa. You want a caption that's relevant to the image, no matter how long it is. It might be a quote. It might just be 2 sentences that make sense, that reaches out and touches
me.
me.
A quote.
Yeah. But don't just forsake the educational part of your post because you think it's social media and nobody reads it. That's just not true anymore. People do read those, and they are important, and they're important for SEO, which we'll get to here in just a second. So we could talk about engagement. We could have a whole hour about engagement. So I would just say, make sure your stuff is fabulous, and make sure you're engaging with other people. Second question I get a lot is, I'm posting videos and I'm making my posts, but I want them to go to Instagram and I want them to go to Facebook, but it's taking me so long to go to both. How can I make it easier for myself? And so there are ways that you can do that by setting up your business account that's linked to your Facebook account. And this is Social Media Marketing 101. Your Facebook and Instagram can link together. They're owned by the same empire. And so you set it up properly so that when you make a post on your Instagram, you can share it straight to your Facebook. And boom, it's done. And this can happen with your reels and your stories and your posts. So anything that you're doing on Instagram can easily get over to Facebook if you've got your tools in hand. This is your best tool that you're going to ever have right here, is having your phone set up with all of your apps, Facebook, Instagram app, your LinkedIn app. Have them all talking to each other. You can always go out and join I'm having trouble talking today, a posting dashboard like Hootsuite. There's many of them out there where you can create your accounts in that and post to them across the board. That's something that I use as a marketing professional, but anybody can get on those and pay for a monthly subscription and do that if you want to do it yourself. So that's one way that you can do it, is just make sure you're set up properly. The third question I'll talk about today before we start wrapping up is, how can I get my name to come up in search? I had a client who was, very concerned, rightfully so. She had typed in her name of her business into Google and nothing came up. Nothing. So that makes you raise your eyes and go, what am I doing wrong, or what am I not doing to make sure that I am going to be included in Google? And the first thing that I would say is hire a professional. If you're concerned about SEO and your company and your product, it's more than just putting the right articles on your website. It's more than just having posts and a profile set up properly in Facebook. It goes really deep, as we all know. SEO can be very expensive to invest in. It can be very detailed and completely scientific. So that would be my disclaimer on this question, is hire an SEO professional, a reputable company who can help you. Okay, that aside, what I can tell you is going to work is you've got to remember that it takes time. To be indexed by Google today is to provide content on your website that says, I have the book you want. So I'm typing in a question about how can I secure my house, land, or the property I just bought. There has to be an answer somewhere out there that reads like a book that says, are you having problems wondering if your land is safe from blah, blah, blah? Well, this is how it works. I mean, elementary, my dear.
Right.
It's step 1, step 2. And Google likes to look at content today, not keywords, but content that is rich with your keywords, meaning that the content talks about what you do.
So if you Googled for that, and let's just say it is what's the best way to sell my land today, and then you click on that, and it starts to get anyone that specializes in selling land. Realistically, they should pop.
They should.
Up in that, right? Okay.
But they're not going to if their website is just full of market stats.
Yeah.
You know,
And not content. Is
and
what
not
you're saying.
content.
Okay.
So your blog is really important here, because your blog is what's going to provide fresh content, and it should be providing fresh content optimally every day to your website that's pertinent to what you do and the answers that you're providing to your customers. So it's really not rocket science. They've made a science out of it.
Right.
But you know, if I can just put it all collectively together in a little bowl for you right now to finish off the show, to get your SEO up, you have got to be everywhere. You've got to have content that's talking about what you do in a specific manner that's clear and easy to understand. Someone put it to me like this one time. They said that Google is looking for novels. When you type in search, Google is going to look for that novel out there that's got chapters and headers and pages full of content that's telling the story about what that person is needing to have answered. So, you know, so much we could talk about this, but we're running out of time. So I would just say that SEO is probably the biggest thing. Contact me if you want to get some more information about that. Making sure that you're posting across the board on your social media platforms, and that you're posting keyword-rich information, that you've got your Google business set up, and that you've got a website that's optimized. So someone's taking care of the back end. You want to make sure that that's done. So all those things are important. But we've run out of time, and I just wanted to end the show today. First of all, and go ahead, Trey, if you could, and pop up that link to a lot of what we were talking about. I've got a blog post, and the link's going to be on the screen there. Instagram trends to incorporate this year. And these Instagram trends that I have in the blog article also deal with SEO. So go to that link and read about the SEO effects that just setting up your Instagram profile properly can have. You can be found easier if things are just set up properly. So go to that link and check out that article. But I wanted to end the show with just a shout out to the ladies. I was doing some research on an article that I'm writing, and I discovered that the rise in female single home buyers is on the rise, rather. And it's very exciting, because it's been 3 decades now as the rise has happened over 3 decades. So today, more single women are buying houses than they ever have. And so that's a great thing, ladies. You have the ability to build your wealth and to provide security and protection for your family through a home of your own. But just wanted to shout out to the ladies. It's Women's History Month, and a lot of you don't know my history. I don't know your history, and it's time we start sharing our histories with each other, because in knowing where we come from and the obstacles we've had to overcome and the things that we've done that have empowered us helps all of us. So ladies, your history is my future, and I just want to give a shout out to all of you, all the ladies in real estate, all the ladies who own their own business, the women-owned companies out there. You girls rock, and you're doing it. You're making it happen. So we celebrate you this month on The Insiders, and that is a wrap.
All right.
So thank you so much
You're
for
welcome.
all your input today.
We'll see you next month.
See you next month.
Okay. All right.
Bye, everybody.